Welcome to part 7 of this series. This episode will chart the history of climate change from the earliest known ice ages up to the start of the current Holocene Epoch. That began around 11,500 years ago. In doing so, the video will cover the definition of ice ages, glacial periods and interglacial periods. We will also look at what is known of the potential causes of ice ages and how life on the planet has changed and developed over millions and indeed hundreds of millions of years. This chart displays all the known ice ages. There appear to have been 5 major ice ages over the past 2.4 billion years. That is 2,400 million years. And as can be seen from the chart, interspersed between these ice ages, there were very large periods of time when the Earth was free of ice, even in high northern latitudes. But before going too much further, we need to define just what is meant by an ice age. Why? Because there is a confusion between the term ice age and the term glacial period. As just one example, I, like many others, including at times the IPCC and the media, often say that the last ice age ended around 11,500 years ago. Strictly speaking, this is incorrect, as we are actually in an ice age now. And more precisely, we are in an interglacial period of an ice age. The interglacial period named the Holocene. So let's attempt to clarify by looking at a standard definition of an ice age. It says that an ice age is a period of long-term reduction in the temperature of the Earth's surface and atmosphere. This implies the presence of extensive ice sheets in the northern and southern hemispheres. Now the next points are important for our overall understanding. Within an ice age, there are cycles of warmer and colder periods. The periods of colder climates are termed glacial periods. This is when the ice caps expand towards the equator. The periods of warmer climates are called interglacials. This occurs when ice caps recede away from the equator. So the root causes of the confusion seem to be that it is sometimes not well understood that ice ages can contain many glacial periods, and that these glacial periods can be extremely harsh, and that it is the set of glacial periods, together with the set of interglacial periods, that in fact constitute an ice age. If we take a quick look at just one glacial period, this will tell us just how extreme they can be. During the most recent North American glaciation, which occurred about 26,000 to 13,300 years ago, the ice cap extended right down to 45 degrees north latitude. And this was no trivial surface ice covering. The ice was from 3 to 4 kilometers thick. This example, I think, may provide us with some understanding of how the confusion comes about between ice ages and glacial periods. Just one more thing on definitions generally. With regard to the dates and period names I will quote throughout this video, there is a lack of uniformity in the literature. This is not essentially a criticism, but merely a recognition. The first generally accepted ice age occurred around 2,400 million years ago and ended around 2,100 million years ago. This first ice age is called the Huronian Ice Age. The early stages of the Huronian, from 2.4 to 2.3 billion years ago, seem to have been particularly severe. In fact, some scientists think that the planet could have been entirely frozen over during this time. However, given the enormous timescales involved, and hence the uncertainty of the evidence. This claim is still being debated. But even though the climate conditions were very severe throughout the 300 million years, life did exist on the planet at this time. It mostly took the form of single-celled organisms, such as this amoeba. But it also included more complex life forms, such as cyanobacteria, a form of bacteria which is multicelled and uses photosynthesis to produce its energy. Following the Huronian Ice Age, the Earth was ice-free for 1,250 million years. It is worth repeating, 1,250 million years. Ice-free meaning that there was no extensive ice sheets in the northern and southern hemispheres. I hope that I'm not making too crude a point when I ask you to note that our present climate, where we have northern and southern ice caps, was not at all normal for a period of 1,250 million years. And during this enormous period, life evolved into wider varieties of multicelled organisms, such as the hydra pictured here. Eventually, there did come a new ice age, the Cryogenian. It began at approximately 850 million years ago and ended at 635 million years ago, a total of 115 million ice-covered years. The Cryogenian Ice Age is generally thought of as being the coldest period of the Earth's existence. As such, the period has become popularized as Snowball Earth, a name depicting a time when the oceans and land were entirely covered in ice. But there is a debate over this claim of complete coverage, as some scientists believe that a band of open sea survived and existed near the equator. During the Cryogenian, the Earth experienced repeated glaciations, of which two were major and worthy of note. The first, known as the Sturtian glaciation, lasted 50 million years between 750 and 700 million years ago. The second, known as the Marinoan glaciation, took place between 660 and 635 million years ago, a total of 25 million years. During this latter glaciation, glacial deposits suggest that this was the most severe ice age in the Earth's history. Throughout this glaciation, the extent of the ice cover was not static. Ice cover extended and contracted in a series of cycles. During the colder periods, the ice looks to have extended as far as the equator, hence the Snowball Earth claim. Irrespective of whether all the Earth was covered in ice or not, it can be seen that the climate on Earth at this time was extremely harsh. Yet life continued to evolve and get more complex, with multicellular life forms evolving, as these fossils from that period indicate. The end of the Marinoan glaciation also signalled the end of the Cryogenian Ice Age. The Earth once more transitioned into a warmer climate that lasted for 175 million years. Close to the midpoint of this period, at around 530 million years ago, there occurred the Cambrian explosion. The explosion referring to an explosion of new life forms that took place at around this time. A large variety of animals suddenly appear in the fossil records. Animals such as the evolutionary relatives of crustaceans, starfish, sponges, mollusks, worms, chordates, and algae. And fish. This is an artist's reconstruction of Metaspragina walcotti, thought to be the world's first definite fish. It existed 500 million years ago. And finally, this is a fossil of a land plant, which also emerged at this time. At the end of the 175 million years of warmth and evolutionary growth, the next ice age began. This was 460 million years ago, and it ended 420 million years ago. It is referred to as the Andean-Saharan Ice Age. During this 40 million year period, life and evolution was severely disrupted by a mass extinction of species. This event occurred about 439 million years ago. During this extinction, around 27% of all families became extinct, as did 57% of all genera, genera being the classification above species, and 60% to 70% of all species went extinct. This extinction was the second worst event in the Earth's history. We will come to the worst just a little later. Although the cause of the mass extinction is not agreed, it seems likely that the onset of the Ice Age played a part, with the formation of large ice sheets, resulting in a reduction in sea levels by as much as 70 to 100 meters. The Andean-Saharan Ice Age was followed by 60 million years of warmer climate conditions, where again the planet was to a large extent free of ice. Insects, seeds and genuine amphibians evolved during these clement conditions. This helped life to recover from the earlier extinction event. This warm climate terminated when the Earth transitioned into the Karoo Ice Age, 360 million years ago. This Ice Age lasted 100 million years, ending 260 million years ago. During the Karoo Ice Age, it is believed that there were two major and severe periods of glaciation. Both glaciations demonstrate that climate change and the spread of ice cover are not governed by simple northern hemisphere and southern hemisphere divides. For during the first glacial period, which occurred from 359 million years to 318 million years ago, ice sheets in fact expanded from a core in southern Africa and South America. While during the second glacial period, which occurred almost immediately after the end of the first glaciation, 318 million years to 299 million years ago, the ice sheets, in contrast to the first glaciation, expanded from a core in Australia and India. It is thought that the rising levels of oxygen in the Karoo Ice Age could have had major effects upon the evolution of plants and animals. It is theorized that the higher oxygen concentration encouraged the evolution of larger creatures, such as the dragonfly-like Meganeura, which had a wingspan of 60 to 75 centimeters, as this artist's impression depicts. Reptiles also emerged during this period, as evidenced by this fossil. At the end of the Karoo Ice Age, a further warmer period started around 260 million years ago, and it lasted nearly as long as 260 million years, finishing only 2.58 million years ago. This was the second longest ice-free period over the past 2.4 billion years. The period was also incredibly complex with regard to life on our planet. There was the continued evolution of yet more complex life forms, but in parallel, there occurred two major mass extinction events, We will look at the extinction events first. The first extinction is known as the Permian-Triassic extinction event. This took place about 252 million years ago. It is the Earth's most severe known extinction event. 96% of all marine species became extinct. 70% of terrestrial vertebrate species became extinct. Around 57% of all families and 83% of all genera became extinct. There was even a mass extinction of insects. It is estimated that it took up to 10 to 20 million years for life on Earth to recover. Now, one group that did recover extremely well was the dinosaurs. Until this extinction, large amphibians and mammal-like reptiles were the dominant life forms. After the extinction, the dinosaurs evolved to become the dominant life form on the planet. This for a period covering over 100 million years. However, as is widely known, the non-avian dinosaurs were made extinct by the next event to occur. This is the Cretaceous Paleogene extinction event, which took place 65 million years ago. Although the event is famous for the dinosaur extinction, it did have a much wider impact than just on the dinosaurs. A wide range of species also went extinct during this event. It is estimated that 75% or more of all species on Earth vanished. We have covered the two mass extinctions that occurred during the 257 million years the Earth was free of ice. But throughout this period, and despite the mass extinctions, life continued to evolve. It may give us a different perspective if we very briefly look at some of the species to emerge. The first mammal fossils have been dated as living 200 million years ago. The first bird fossils so far discovered appear to have lived 150 million years ago, and flowers emerged around 130 million years ago. Following the extinction event that put paid to the dinosaurs, the first primates appeared 60 million years ago. And coming to the end of this extended warm period, fossils of hominidae or great apes have been dated to 20 million years ago. This span of 257 million years came to an end only, in a relative sense, 2.58 million years ago. That juncture marks the start of the present Ice Age, the Quaternary Ice Age. There then began the historically typical cycle of alternating glacial and interglacial periods. This saw ice sheets advancing and then retreating in cycles. The advances took place on approximately 40,000 and 100,000 year timescales. The 40,000 year period corresponding to the 40,000 year cycles of the Earth's angle of tilt, known as the Earth's obliquity. The 100 year period corresponding to the 100 year cycles of the Earth's orbit, known as the Earth's eccentricity. Both of these features are covered in part 3 of this series, the Milankovitch cycles. Between each glacial period, as indicated before, cycles of warmer interglacials occurred, where the ice sheets would sporadically break up and retreat. Eventually these cycles reached the relatively modern era, and we came to the end of the last glacial period, 11,500 years ago. Then the climate transitioned to our current interglacial period, the Holocene. Part 8 of this series will look at the Holocene in detail. For now, we will take stock and draw some conclusions from the contents of this video. One fact that is worth noting can be gleaned from a summary of the different periods. Out of the last 2,400 million years, 1,742 million years were ice-free. Ice ages occupied only around 658 million years. That's almost a 3-to-1 ratio of ice-free to ice age. But having taken note of this ratio, I think we should now attempt to answer the question, what causes ice ages and how do they come about? The short answer is that there is no commonly accepted theory that explains the causes of an ice age. However, there are quite a few climate events that potentially contribute to the start of any particular ice age. And there is a generalized scenario that we can look at which may provide a glimmer of understanding. The scenario would go something like this. Over the past 2.4 billion years, it has been normal by a 3-to-1 ratio for the Earth to be ice-free. During these ice-free periods, the Earth's temperature has not been static. It has fluctuated up and down. During one of the cooler periods, it sometimes happens that an ice sheet starts to form at any arbitrary point on the Earth's surface. This would probably happen on numerous occasions throughout the millions of years of an ice-free period. Now, normally the ice sheet would melt when the Earth fluctuates to a higher temperature. For some reason, I will return to a possible reason a little later. For some reason, on the advent of an ice age, the temperature does not rise and may in fact fall. This causes the ice sheet to extend and further ice sheets to form. A vicious cycle has now started where, over millions of years, the ice sheets extend and combine. And this process continues to the extent that the definition of an ice age is met, and the ice age begins by definition. The perfect example of such a scenario was given earlier, with the transition to the present Quaternary Ice Age, where the Antarctica ice sheet started to appear around 34 million years ago, and temperatures did not rise to melt it, but instead, over the following 20 million years, the worldwide temperatures fell by 8 degrees centigrade. And so, not only did the Antarctica ice sheet extend, but the southern ice sheet gradually formed. And this brought in the start of the present Quaternary Ice Age. I think that is a reasonable scenario to form a template of how ice ages form. But what causes that initial drop in temperature to continue, and thus the initial ice sheet not to melt but to extend? This slide contains the most prominent factors that could cause a drop in global temperature and help to trigger an ice age. It is almost certain that no one factor would cause an ice age, but a combination of events occurring at propitious times is very plausible. If at least 2 or more of these listed potential causes occurred at roughly the same time, meaning perhaps within 1,000 or even 1,000,000 years of each other, then it seems plausible that the cumulative effect could trigger a vicious cycle of ever-decreasing temperatures and extending ice sheets. Now, this is too uncertain a subject to dwell further in this video, but it will not prevent us bringing this video to a close with a summary of conclusions. These are the major conclusions to be drawn from this video. 1. The climate has changed throughout the last 2.4 billion years. 2. Ice ages are composed of sets of glacial and interglacial periods. 3. By definition, the Earth is currently in an interglacial period. 4. In an interglacial period, it is both normal and expected that 4.1. Global temperatures rise. The ice sheets melt and recede. Glaciers melt and recede. Sea levels rise. I think you know where I am going with this, so I will not go there in this video, but leave you to draw your own conclusions with regard to how this pertains to the modern period of climate change. In part 8 of this series, we will look at the Holocene in detail, right up to present times. Goodbye for now.